Good morning, friends. Hope you have tried to solve this problem on your own for fault sharing. So let's demonstrate this in Java. So what we are trying to do is that we are trying to create a variable which would be shared in the same cache line, and we'll try to manipulate one of the variables from one of the threads, and then we'll see that whether it will be creating that cache as invalidated, and then reflush it from the main memory. So I already have got my IntelliJ open. So this is my main class, and inside this you can see that we have got a static class, volatile, long, unpadded, and there it's only like one long value here. So we'll use this only like one long value for a time being, and we'll try to create two objects of it or four objects out of it. We'll see. So, but this is the idea that we are just using this static, this public inner static class for false sharing demo, containing only one variable as volatile long. We are using volatile because I would be using multiple threads to demonstrate this, and that's why we need it to be thread safe. So also I have created my test class. So here I am creating four objects for this volatile long unpadded, which we just saw here, this private class. So not private but inner class. So we are using this array, and we are creating inside this array, which will be holding four volatile long unpadded objects. And we have got this test case now there where we will demonstrate fault sharing. Use a for loop first for I, and int I is equal to 0, and I will create a variable number of threads, which is not here present. So let's create it. I'll create a variable here, number of threads. I will keep it as 4 because we have got 4 objects here in the array. So I will just use private final int number of threads is equal to 4. Okay. So we have got this for loop here, and now let's create 3 threads as well. So I'll create thread array threads is equal to new thread I. So in a sense, we are creating like 4 threads one by one in this for loop, and then we will also create. Let's create another for j is equal to threads dot length. And then I will create a new thread inside it. I'll create threads j, and I will create a new thread. And inside this, we will create a runnable object. Let me create this. I will just create a method here, unpadded runnable j. So what it means here is that once we start with 0 to 4, so for the first iteration, it would be creating only one thread. And then here inside this, it will create this new thread by passing this runnable object. This method will create it very shortly. But the idea is that for multiple iteration of this for loop, for the outside for loop, we'll creating more number of threads starting with 1, 2, 3, and 4, for example, like that. And then finally, it will creating like 4 threads for the last iteration. It will be creating 4 threads here. And then for each of the 4 threads, it would be creating this this thread with this runnable object for create unpadded. Now let's create this unpadded. Just implement this now. So I'll do Alt Enter, and then it will create method inside this. And let's make it runnable. That's fine. And here also we'll create. It's all defaults looking good. I will just mark it as whatever. Let's mark it as K to make it different. Okay. So now we have to create runnable objects because we have to pass this runnable in the constructor of this thread so that these threads are created. So it will be creating like 1 thread, 2 thread, 3 thread, and 4 threads in 4 iterations. Okay, so here what I will do is I will pass a lambda because lambdas are easy. I will use lambdas, and let's create this runnable object. So what we are trying to do in this runnable object is, so this is by using this, it means that I am implementing the run method of the run of the runnable. So this lambda expression, whatever I type inside this curly braces, it would be the task of that runnable thread. So here what I'm trying to do is I will do a long I, and let me create iterations plus 1. We haven't declared this iteration, so let's create this. Just do alt enter here, create field iterations, and private long iteration is fine. I'll mark it as final, and then set a value here as say 100 million, because then only it would be possible to demonstrate this fault sharing or the fault sharing to happen. So 100 millions iterations, and let's go back here. So I'm going to iterate from 100 million plus 1, and then finally. So what I'm doing is, while I will just count down from here, minus I. It is just that I'm trying to loop this iteration from 100 millions back to 0 by using this minus I, and until it's not 0, what it will do is that the unpadded longs that we have created, which contains all the 4 threads, all the 4 objects of our volatile unpadded class. So it will try to set the value here. Okay. If you go to this value is this field, volatile and long unpadded. Every time we are trying to set this value, because it's all public, so we can access it directly. I used this inner static class of this demo class to demonstrate this. Let's go back here. So let's revise it again. What we are doing is that in this run method that we are creating here in this thread, it will iterate 100 million times, and every time for the 100 million times, it will just try to whatever the unpadded long k variable. I mean, this for one object that is created here, it will try to set the value for 100 million times with the value of I, starting with 100 million, then it will go down to minus one until it reaches 0. So it will do it so many times. So this is the task of this enable object that we're creating. Let's go back here. So we have already created the number of threads, and each thread would be doing this task here as described. Now let's I will try to benchmark this, because we have to measure the performance. As we have mentioned that once we are demonstrating anything and trying to see that which one is better than the other, we have to measure the performance. So let's just do the same. And for that, I always prefer to use this instant class, instant from Java time. Sorry, instant start, and then I will call it as instant.now. Just let's treat this as our start time, and after that we will run all the threads that we have created inside this. So again, I use a for loop for each, and here I will just iterate through, say, thread t, and then threads, and then t dot start. So we are just going to trigger all these threads that we have created, and now there would be multiple threads trying to do the same operation on various array objects that we have created here. Okay, let's make it a little bit Control-Alt-L. Okay, and similarly, before we proceed further, I like to join all the threads that we have created. For this, again, I will just do t dot join. I expect this is throwing interrupted exception, so alt enter, and then I will throw interrupted exception here. Okay, so at this point, we will all the threads that has been created inside this, starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will be creating all the threads, and then it will do all the tasks by setting these values here, and then finally, at this point, we join it. So once we reach this point, we have already done with all the threads task, which is this task. Okay, and now finally we will again mark the end. So for that, again, I will use time elapsed and duration between the start time and the end time, right? So start, and then again I will use instant dot now dot. I will prefer to use milliseconds here, 2 millis. So duration dot between dot 2 millis is present here. Okay. So duration In duration, we have got 2 millis. So we have got start duration between start and now, after we have completed this t dot join, and then we convert this duration into millis, and this is the time elapsed. Okay, I think this is a very simple, naive way to check the duration, to do the benchmark testing. We start with instant, and then finally, once the task is done here, we do this duration dot between, and then calculate the time taken for this task in between. Okay, so now what I will do is I will. Okay, so just use unpadded. I'm using a printf here because I don't want a lot of string concatenations, and let's do this number of threads is equal to, say, %d. Number of threads is where it keeps varying, right? It's from 0, starting with 0 to 3 to 4. So 0, 1 to 3, and there's 4 threads will be created here. And total time taken would be %d again, and milliseconds, right? And let's create %n here, and then finally I will pass the placeholders here which we have passed. One is the number of threads. Number of threads here is I, right? Because this is the number of threads that we are passing, and I, and the duration, right? So the time duration that we have passed here, milliseconds. It will be time elapsed. After this, I will also prefer to have this system.out.println, and just create this arrow \n as well.